Welcome to Yoga and Business. This is our third conversation here where we meet on the new moon to talk about what it means for the philosophy of yoga and the principles of business to come together in one's life. And my sincere belief and practice that it's each of our responsibilities and God-given rights to really step into embracing all of our unique gifts and what we were put on this planet to do that only we can do, and that is your business, and how you create that only you can do, and only you know how. But I really feel powerfully about what this means for each of us to really step into in our empowerment. And so with that in mind, I want to introduce all of my friends here, Corey Sipper, Jacqueline Osselin, and Gigi Chiarello. And we're going to have a conversation today about stories of self-worth and value, because I have been blessed to know each of these women now for quite a few years. And some of us even only in the last year. But some of us go back 7 years, and the paths and the journeys that we've each taken individually and also collectively, I think is fascinating. And so I really welcome you to just share from your heart about what it has meant for you to step into your own self-worth and value, and what you've learned in the process about how important this is. So does anyone want to jump in with a story that they've been thinking about? Or I can share something just as an example. Okay, so one of the things that I have lots of notes of all kinds of things that I've been thinking about. But I think the thing that came up for me this morning was how when the biggest shifts happened in my life were when I actually stepped out of American culture, and took a journey post graduating college to really follow my heart. And it led me to go to Hawaii, where I decided to work for 6 months, and then thought I'd work my way around the world, and could feel in my heart this sense of community and belonging that I felt like I would find. And it was a real risk that, when we first landed in New Zealand, then it was our very first destination. And on day 3, I felt that feeling. And I went, oh my God, I have to stay here. And then what happened subsequently and very quickly changed the course of my life in the biggest ways. And in 3 months, I was applying for residency with the former help of the parliamentary minister of New Zealand, who just said, we need more young people like you who are 22 years old and want to like contribute to the world. And I was like, yes, let's do this, you know? Oh, that's my father. I'm sorry. Because he's awesome. He's here with us, I'm sure, as a strong masculine figure. But when I think about that journey for myself, it was also the time in my life when I had the least. I was 22 years old, and I was working every kind of odd job you could think of, from waitressing tables and bartending to lawn mowing and taking care of children and selling artwork and giving massages and like, things like that. And I had such little money, but I was so happy. I was so content with my life. And that was when circumstances happened where, even though there was tragedy, and we can focus on that, there were also huge blessings that came into my life in ways that brought money and power and the ability to create even more substantial change with a bigger vision. And so I was just thinking about that place that received that, and how simple it was, with just the daily practices of the little things and each interaction that we have with each other, and where we choose to be and how we choose to go about our lives and bring in and interact with. So I think the importance for me in the journey that I've led so far is, particularly with all of you, the work we've done has been around being of service at our heart. I think that's why we all choose to show up here. There's something about wanting to truly be of service to people that's a piece of this. And I think that when we know our own worthiness, right? And this is a big thing. We're talking about mental health a lot right now, or I am a lot. So we all are in my community because I'm super passionate about this now. Not that that's new, but that, you know, that place of mental wellness comes from loving yourself, comes from knowing your value, you know, and your own worthiness. So I think that we just can't overlook ever that each interaction that we have with each other, it is an opportunity to be of service. And I'll leave it at that. So that's my story of, you know, I think just continuing to grow. And Jackie recently talked about how, like, the more money that I'm receiving, the more I have to give away. And I've talked about that a lot too in the last 6 months, as with some of our work, we've all started receiving more, and we're all starting to give back more now in bigger and bigger ways. And how this networking that we're doing with each other and supporting each other feeds this for us. So that's a beautiful piece that I think we've all been creating as well. So thank you for being here and participating in this conversation. Jump on in if you're ready.
Thank you, Amy, for hosting us and for inviting us. As I was sitting here thinking about what I would share, you know, when we talk about value and self-worth, I can't say that I ever had anyone to sit down and talk to me about what that was, you know, especially as a female. Nobody sat down and said, this is what makes you valuable. This is what makes you worthy. It wasn't until, you know, I stepped into this space of healing and wellness that I even took time to be present with what that means and how that should show up for us. And, you know, in our culture, particularly in the Western culture, value and worth is measured and identified by those tangible things and the things that you achieve and, you know, what you do and the roles that you play and the labels that others get to put on you. And it feels like this spiraling out of control, trying to do all the things and be all these things to other people. And once I got quiet and really stepped into my practices, my spiritual practices more, stepped into the yoga space and really understood that, you know, things that people look at us and measure us by is the physical. This is just the container for the person that we really are, which is our spirit. And so every single person has a purpose, their reason for being, and it has nothing to do with all these things that are external that people like to check off and measure you by, and it's all through somebody else's lens. And so for me, I've come to really, it comes down to I became a mother at the age of 19. I was my mother's only child, and I wanted to just be a grown up and be gone from home and be away from rules. And so I decided that getting married was the way to make that happen, right? So I married a church boy, and then at 19, I became a mom. And so I have been a mother, you know, for over half of my life. I've been responsible for someone else's well-being for over half of my life. And there are times when I was ashamed of that. There are times when I felt like, you know, my search for love that I didn't have from my dad kept leading me down these rabbit holes and these relationships that just weren't working for me. And so for a very long time, I was ashamed to share my story of being a mother at 19 and being married 3 times and divorced 3 times. And on the other side of my mother passing away 10 years ago, is when I took a look at my life and said, wow, what do I want people to say about me? What are they going to say about me? They've said beautiful things about my mother. She was a wonderful person. She was a giver. She loved very passionately. And I had to stop and think, what do I want people to say? Who do I want people to say I am? And that really put me on this path of asking the question, who am I? And using that as a guide to really know that I'm valuable and I'm worthy regardless of what I've done or not done. Just because I am God's child, I'm created by the Creator, I am valuable. And that's not an easy path to be on, but it's a very important path that we as women, I feel, have an obligation to help others to understand and to embrace. And so, you know, when we talk about value and self-worth, it's not about, you know, what have I done? What have I earned? What have I achieved? But who have I served today, starting with myself? You know, how have I allowed myself to say, you know, listen, I'm not going to be on today. I'm sorry. You know, I can't show up for that because I have to show up for me. And by showing up for me, it eases suffering, it eases stress, it allows me to be in a place of peace. And so when it comes to value and self-worth, you know, in my life, it's been it's a matter of life and death in terms of, you know, do I want to live a life of regret and feel like I'm dying? Or do I want to live a life of vibrancy and feel like I'm giving to others and that others are able to benefit from my purpose for being here? And so I feel like I'm rambling now, but I will stop and just pause and just say thank you again, Amy, for creating this space for us to share from our hearts.
That was awesome. I'll just speak for a couple minutes. I totally related with so much of what you said, Jackie, just about at the beginning when you were talking about just that, you know, we have all these expectations of really through society and everything and how we are supposed to be. And in terms of my journey, I just in the last, I want to say like 6 months, and I'm going to be 50 this year. I am really, well, making time for myself, really, like you were saying, like once you start doing that, it really makes a difference. Only teaching classes that resonate with me, like really letting go of the classes that don't work for me to teach as a yoga teacher and personal trainer. And also for the first time, through Elena Brower's mentorship, actually, what really, and Amy's heard me talk about this, but what really resonated with me was this one meeting when she was saying, you know, some of you guys have been doing what you've been doing for 20 and 30 years, and you still, you know, not valuing yourself. Don't think that you have what it takes to make really good money and to get paid for your expertise. And I recognize that in myself, that I somewhere, you know, somewhere along the way, I had just thought that I wasn't good enough for whatever reason, you know, and I thought that actually that I had already gotten over that and I was beyond that, but I realized at a root level, I still, when I really was honest with myself, that I still did not think that I was worthy, that people were just more worthy than me. I mean, I don't think I thought it in those words necessarily, but it was just an energetic thing. And so I would say the last 6 months of my life, and, you know, coincidentally, I brought doTERRA into my life and using the oils last August. So, but the last, I would say, even the last 3 months of my life have just been so much work, you know, around revamping my business, only doing the things that feel right for me, not, you know, putting myself in a situation where I'm teaching classes that I don't like, not overworking myself, and building my online business and believing that it can be as successful as some of these other people. And yes, you know, you have to learn how to do things. You can't just, you know, you do have to go through a learning process, but you have to also make the choice to learn. You have to make the choice to educate yourself in the things that you want to succeed in. And so that's kind of where I am with my yoga and business. So I totally related, Jackie, to a lot of this stuff that you said. So we're getting it at, you know, you're younger than me, but we're getting it at middle age. So that's good. That's a good thing.
I'm
So-
not young, Corey. Did you say I'm younger than you, Corey?
What's that?
Did you say I'm younger than you are?
You're younger than me.
No. No.
Yeah. Well, no? Well, cool. Then we're even more aligned.
Welcome to the 50 Club.
But how old are you?
I'll be 55 this year.
55, looking good, my dear.
Thank you. Thank you. Must be something magical about August. That's when I signed up in doTERRA as well in August. Yeah.
My goodness, I'm loving this conversation. And like every time each one of you speak, I'm like, yes, I have a piece of that too. So thank you for sharing. Wow, where to go? What is really coming forth for me is that, yes, like I feel that so many of us in our society are taught about value through other people's eyes and how other people will be perceiving us. I know that that's what I experienced growing up and even into my 20s, living on the East Coast, and just the fast pace, the corporate lifestyle, and everything is valued, as Jackie was saying, like from outside of you. Like, what are you achieving? What have you achieved? Where are you headed? What are your goals? And I too didn't start really looking into my value and self-worth until I started to turn inwards when I moved to the West Coast and started to explore my spirituality. And one of the things that's coming forth for me too is we teach others how to value us based off of how we value ourselves. And so as you ladies were already speaking to, like taking that time for self-care for ourselves and putting ourselves first so that we can be nourished to then serve others, because we can't serve from an empty cup. So we have to fill up our cups first, and really valuing what that means for us in each moment, because it might be different and it might be changing, especially as we are growing older and doing different things and our bodies are changing. Even if we're younger and our bodies are always changing, and really learning to listen and honor in the present. And that's the next thing that I really feel is so present for me right now, is presence, and really being with people, with a situation, with whatever it is that is in front of us, and fully engaging in that moment. And not just presence, but a loving presence. And I realize my practice right now is really tapping into that in the mornings while I'm sitting in my tea meditations, tapping into that loving presence and asking for my remembrance throughout my day to come back to that place, so that when I am connecting with anybody for work or just out and about while I'm shopping for groceries or whatever, but to be coming from that place. And I realize that when I do, the connections are so aligned. The person that I'm called to reach out to, when I call them, they're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about this the other day, or thinking about you the other day. Or so it's really fun to start to witness the synchronicities or the alignments that are happening through that as well, when we connect from that loving presence. And yeah, and I feel too, when we are that present, those around us become much more present. And somebody was mentioning to me the other day that I forget what type of schooling it is, but the teacher would literally, it'll come to me. It's
Waldorf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't the Waldorf one. It was the other type of school that's similar.
Montessori.
Thank you, Montessori. But where the teacher literally is just like doing something, like, but so focused, whether it was like a cup that she picked up and then she was looking at and taking a drink and then placing it down and watching it. And she said all of the children in the class get silent and they just focus in on the teacher and the action she's doing because she's so engaged with it. It drew their awareness into that moment. So the more that we really honor ourselves and come into the presence, I feel that others then start to value what it is we're focusing in on and how we're expressing it. And I hope you could hear me over the garbage trucks that just came by, timely manner. So, but thank you, Amy, for bringing us together to share and reflect on this, because I think this conversation really needs to happen with all ages, especially the young ones, to really invite them into understanding what their value is at their innate level and helping them to find that and direct them into that space.
Yes. And I think too, like, you know, those of us who've been studying yoga for a long time, it's yoga is this alignment and this coming together and this unification that we're talking about and this loving presence. And I know that my teacher would often say, especially because my relationship with him really started when I first came into motherhood. And he would say to me, you know, don't worry about teaching your kids yoga. Just do your practice and make your practice a priority. Like when you're able to with your young kids, you know, start to have particularly those morning times where mom's yoga is actually the priority of the family, because when mother, and it's fair enough to say father, but when the caregivers are cared for first, then they can give. And also then that it is fascinating, even with my own kids, how they pick it all up. I don't think they're practicing. I don't think they get it. I've tried to get them, right? They're 14 and 15 and a half now. And over the years, I've tried to give them a yoga practice or get them to do something. And it's met with such resistance. But when I leave them to be, and like you say, do, and that's that thing, the more I do my practice and hold the loving presence in their presence, the more they are drawn into that space. And they do know these things. They, you know, a yoga practice is a natural state of being without any force or manipulation on one's presence. Just being in all that is alive and real. And kids so naturally do that anyway, you know, and then to let them know that that is enough. Like, that is our work as mothers, I think, particularly of our youth, but also I think in whatever we do as humans in our process of adulting, we birth things, we create things. And it's that same thing of that loving presence and attention as a priority too. Particularly then, like you say, I think when you set those intentions at the beginning of the day and then also at the end of the day also, or at least one or the other throughout the day, it all helps to bring it back to that remembrance of that priority, you know? So I want to leave space for others to share too. And I've got about 5 minutes. So please, any other thoughts? No? Okay. Well, thank you for all you do and for who you are, and for being here and sharing your stories with us. You matter.
Thank
Everyone
you.
out there is.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Namaste.
Happy new moon.
Ashe.
Bye for now. We'll see you
Ashe.
next new moon.
Ciao, ciao.